the suburbs.
Do I look like a fairy princess?
They thought they were safe.
Hang on a sec, someone's at the door.
Then a random crime changed everything.
The man who murdered my daughter is free.
I don't even remember what she looked like.
I can't let him go.
You'll spend the rest of your life in prison.
I can't rest till he pays for what he did to her.
Eye for an eye.
What are you gonna do? Shoot me?
Rated R. Starts Friday, January 12th.
Hey, folks, we are back with another new episode of Unfinished Business Television. What? And a deep dive, in case you didn't hear that. I am your host, as always, Jeff Galashaw, and with me is my co-host and technical support and brother from another mother, Andre Joseph of AJ Epics.
A Macarena.
Okay. It's not one of your more spirited sayings. So, being that it's a deep dive, actually, maybe you're saying has something to do with the year this movie came out. We are going to be discussing a movie in depth. And this episode, we're going to be talking about Eye for an Eye from 1996, not the Chuck Norris movie. This one stars Sally Field. This the story of this film or plot is when the courts fail to keep behind bars the man who raped and murdered her daughter, a woman seeks her own form of justice. Played by Sally Field. The perpetrator is played by on-screen bad guy legend Kiefer Sutherland. Ed Harris plays her husband. Olivia Burnett plays her, unfortunately, the victim, her daughter, who some of you might remember from a little show called The Torrical Sins or Almost Home, who I will admit was kind of a factor of me seeing this in theaters when it came out. We also have Joe Mantegna, the detective in charge of the case. Beverly D'Angelo, working again with director John Schlesinger in this film, though don't exactly know why she's in this movie. She doesn't have that big of a role or much to do. Charlene Woodard, who plays another member of the parents whose kids were murdered support group. I don't remember the name of the group, sorry. So I'll just refer to it as that. Philip Baker Hall playing another character named Sidney, like his character in Heartbeat. And Keith David as his kind of vigilante partner. And Donald Logue in another early career role. As this movie is based on a novel by Erica Holzer. As I mentioned before, I saw this in theaters. And it was definitely a crowd pleaser. I saw this either at Kings Plaza or Kings Highway Theater with my friend. Because for most of my teenage life and my 20s, my big thing was always going to movies on opening days or opening weekends. And, sometimes not the best cream of the crop comes out. So sometimes you just go with, hey, what looks good that's coming out this week? Hence, Eye for an Eye with Sally Field, it's predictable. You could tell by the trailer what was most likely going to happen in this movie. With Kiefer Sutherland playing the guiltiest looking guilty person in a movie. I'm like, seems one wardrobe. So, Sally Field, she was still, vital in her age. I remember when I first saw this movie, the most memorable part was that Charlene Woodard, who some of you might remember as one of the sisters from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, playing her friend in this group, and find out the character was a lesbian, and I was like, this is 1996. It was very rare you saw lesbian characters depicted in movies, so I was just like, wow, this felt pretty ballsy for the other predictability of this movie, But I will admit, I had a good time, and obviously rewatched it recently to prepare. And, I now look more at the filmmaking, because John Schlesinger managed to make the mundane still seem kind of thrilling. I will admit this movie is more like almost like a TV movie on the big screen, but it has those little things that make it interesting. And I mean, you have, bigger stars. I mean, this film is packed with a good cast. And I just remember this movie I remember laughing uncomfortably more in the theaters than when I'm watching it now, like when he says, like, pull the fucking trigger when Joe Montana threatens him. And, I mean, the main thing of this movie seemed to be, at the time, criminals having more rights than the victims. And that seems to be what this film is going up against. Andre, tell me about what you thought or how you were introduced to this movie.
So this movie, I remember the TV spots for it, but because I was relatively a kid, it wasn't something that really fascinated me. I didn't see this movie until I was at my friend's dad's house one day, because my friend's dad's a filmmaker too, and he watches everything that's on TV. And this happened to be on. He had seen it, and I was watching it, and it was like, oh, this is basically a female Death Wish movie. And I had seen, of course, all the Death Wish films. Shout out to Paul Talbot. And I was like, okay, now I think I want to go home and try to stream and watch the rest of this. And, it's one of those movies where it's so bad, it's so good, like it's not, because look, there's so many cliches. You know how this movie is going to play out.
I'll give it that.
But there's a couple of things that make it worthwhile to watch when it's on, like when you want to just stop and you just have it on TV. First of all, I agree that Kiefer Sutherland is the standout. He plays villains well, but here it was like John Schlesinger was telling him just to dial it up as much as possible, down to sort of like that creepy look that he has, like he's one of the street punks from the Death Wish movies. Him, and this is why I mentioned the Macarena reference, because they're playing this music in the background when he decides to pour coffee on a dog, just to add more reason for you to hate this guy, not just because he raped and murdered Sally Field's daughter. Although I didn't believe the whole thing with him and like the really attractive Spanish woman that he delivered groceries for. Not obviously that sort of thing can really happen, but to this day I'm watching this movie and thinking, who in their right mind would allow a guy looking like that delivering your groceries more than once? Like, I would call the supermarket the next day and be like, can I just get a different guy to come down here? This guy's like really creeping me out with his tattoos and, his 80s mullet. Like he's from Grand Theft Auto Vice City, in fact, his role was so scary. And I just wrote about this for my job, that at the time he took his daughter to a Chuck E. Cheese and people ran out of there, like all the parents, because they had seen the movie and they were afraid of him. So he pretty much made a mark. He wasn't Jack Bowery yet, but that's also a testament to him as an actor, because Kiefer Sutherland is one of the few actors that can play villains you really hate, and he can play good guys that you actually do care about. That, him, John Lithgow, very few that can pull that off. Now, Sally Field's an interesting prospect for this movie, because originally they wanted Jamie Lee Curtis to play her role, and because she was coming off True Lies, her stock went up in Hollywood. But she did another movie called House Arrest instead, and I think that was kind of a mistake. And not a good. A lot of kids' movies back then, but that wasn't one of the ones that I really enjoyed growing up. But
I liked it. It has Jennifer Love Hewitt in it. So
yeah, it was one of Jennifer Love Hewitt's early roles. We'll probably do a deep dive on that one day. But it's weird because it's, on one hand, it's hard to believe Sally Field becoming a badass, and then they have like that love scene with her and Ed Harris. It's like, okay,
but that's what helps sells it, and you don't see it coming.
The thing about it for me is, like, Sally Field in Pumping Iron was very attractive. Like, I probably would have tried to hit on her then. Sally Field post Forrest Gump in 1996, before she played Aunt May in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, Probably not. That'd be like trying to, get with your girlfriend's grandmother. No, but I think it works only because if you remember, like as we had Paul Talbot on the original Death Wish novel, when they were going to adapt it as a movie, it was going to be a Sidney Lumet film with Jack Lemmon playing Paul Kersey before they hired Charles Bronson. So it's actually more believable to have somebody as sort of quaint and kind of sane and suburban like Sally Field, like go through this transformation by the end of the movie. And everybody else, Beverly D'Angelo is only in there because she's friends with John Schlesinger, and I guess they just threw her a bone to give her a part. Joe Mantegna being the asshole cop was good, especially when she tells him off after the Kiefer Sutherland kills the Spanish lady. Charlene Woodward at times was a little annoying, but I like the fact that it was the twist of her being lesbian, then finding out she's an undercover FBI agent, and then having her have the son who was playing Nikki on the Fresh Prince was kind of weird, and it was like, man, Nikki was getting a lot of work back then.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, Ross Bagley, come on the show if you're ever around and see this. Yeah, and he was coming off Pacific Heights with our friend Daniel Pine. And so this is the point when his career was beginning to slump. This was one of the last thrillers he did. And then he did that Madonna movie. And then that was pretty much a day for him. So I don't want to necessarily say this was his last hurrah. Pacific Heights was his last hurrah. This was kind of like, dude, you did Marathon Man. What the hell are you doing? Like a typical vigilante flick. Come on, you're better than this. But
he brought some gravitas to it. The whole thing is, like you said, it's saved because of Kiefer Sutherland, because he's just so, like, the peeing in her yard after. And she even remarked, like, he's marking his territory. Him just like, I just like the part where he just goes out on the street to just sit out and smoke, even though he seems to do that on his balcony all day anyway.
This obsession with ice cream.
Well, hey, who doesn't, other than the people who are lactose intolerant? The other thing that was really weird with this movie, I remember I loved him teaching that weird rhyme. Tough titty says the kitty, but the milk still tastes the same. I just was like, that is fucking creepy, but funny. And then when she repeats it towards the end, and like, who told you that? And then everything comes into Ed Harris like, what? It's like, where have you been throughout this movie, Ed Harris? I was shocked Ed Harris was in this movie.
That's Tim Allen in that part.
Yeah, you wouldn't think a big caliber actor as Ed Harris playing that role, because he might play the wife role. It was like, what? I want you to stop this. At no point is he like really the traditional husband, manly alpha male type. I like the.
I think he read the script. He saw he was going to have a bedroom scene with Sally Field, and she was going to get aggressive with him, and is like, "Sign me up."
Well, maybe he was more like, "Oh, I get to sleep with Jamie Lee Curtis." Then he was like, Sally Field.
Right. It's all True Lies.
Exactly. He was like, "Ooh, Jamie Lee Curtis, sign me up." They was like, "Oh, wait, Forrest Grump's mom?" He was like, I'm sure his wife was happy. He wasn't. He was like, oh, okay, well, I signed the contract already. But like I said, he doesn't have much to do, but I like the fact that the daughter was from another, her previous husband, so at least that kind of gave them that dynamic where it's like, how could you say I didn't love her, as the stepfather. I like that, her obsession with her deceased daughter is straining her relationship with her daughter who's still around. And when I first saw the movie, I didn't think that he had raped Olivia Burnett's character because, first of all, it happened so fast. Like, yeah, time? And thankfully they didn't show it. Whereas, when the Spanish lady was like, oh, no, let's go all in. It's like, okay, you could have cut that too. We didn't need no hard R here. This could have stayed PG. Well, it wasn't going to be PG-13, but we could have gone with a nice R. So there was that.
Well, I also thought, comedically it was out of place at the funeral with the fat lady stripping on the toy car.
Yeah, what the hell was that? That was just like,
yeah,
that made no sense. It had nothing to do with the rest of the film. It was just like, huh?
that was like something out of Home Alone. I mean, there could have been other ways to get that emotion out of Sally Field, where she just starts cracking up out of nowhere, because it was like kind of a nice character moment. But for that to be the cause, that's like, okay, this is not Honky Tonk Freeway, John Schlesinger. This is like a serious, violent movie.
Well, it was meant, I guess, for her to be like, think about the carpet. And it was just like, yeah, okay. It was wasted. I'm trying to think of other things about this movie. It's unique. It was back when you could still get a predictable, practically TV movie material into, the theaters. But I did like the last line where after all this, and he's like, I know you did it, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, prove it. And he's just like, oh, checkmate, bitch. And you can.
Well, you know what? That's the other thing that's hilarious to me about this movie. It's just Sally Field cursing, especially when she has to argue with Joe Montana. He's like, how's this? Fuck you!
Well, it's little Sally Field. I mean, she's about to take Montana.
The flying nun is cursing like a sailor.
Sally Field will always shock you. The sad part is, if they made the film now, I have a feeling Susan Sarandon would play the role. As a grandmother. Hey, why not? We have Nicolas Cage as a grandfather, protecting his family. And in an action movie, why not Susan Sarandon kicking ass as a grandmother, getting revenge on the man who murdered her granddaughter?
I prefer Jane Fonda because she doesn't look like she's 87.
Well, that's because Jane Fonda. Well, I'm not going to go there.
She's still kind of got it going on. I'm not going to lie.
Stop watching that movie that she's only in for 5 minutes that they nominated her for an Oscar for, with Harvey Keitel, of all people. Stop your perverted fantasies with Jane Fonda, you and your geriatrics. See, I don't know. Could I get this movie into a theater with Jennifer Love Hewitt starring as the mother?
Did you see the pictures of her recently with the cropped hair? It's possible now.
Okay, I just gotta. But see, here's the major. Unfortunately, damn, Kiefer Sutherland can still play the role.
Yeah, he could.
I mean, the mullet's not going to be as long. But,
do a prequel about his character, just de-age him.
Well, here would be my question if I ever got to interview Kiefer Sutherland. The look, was that because, come on, that's kind of your 80s look. Did you, just ham it up a little, or was that no, that's how they designed the character to look?
Well, you got to consider a gay man did The Lost Boys, and maybe John Schlesinger saw that, and he's gay, so he's like, just do what you did in The Lost Boys, but with a goatee and show your muscles more.
And have this big ass mustache. And I'm just like I said, the one thing you will definitely remember is Kiefer Sutherland after watching this movie. You'll probably remember Sally Field. How did she pick up that gun? I liked that final scene too between the two of them. It wasn't like, oh, gotcha, bitch, and they just shot him. It was like this whole big struggle and fight. So I liked that. Was there any significance with the ice though? That he murdered her by basically clubbing her with ice to kill her?
Well, wasn't that she made an ice sculpture for her daughter's birthday, and she just happened to fall on it when he attacked her?
And okay, I can understand that, but it seemed like in his usual MO of murder rape, it's always people on his route. I'd be like, considering you're the person who does this route, maybe not, because how nobody's connecting this, I guess, because they can't find DNA. But also, at least with the other lady, he seemed to have staked out the place. This, he just seemed like, oh, my first delivery here. Ah, she's 16. I gotta rape her?
And speaking of DNA, if you notice, there's a lot of references to the OJ trial, which was going on at the time that they were shooting this movie. And they even showed a clip from the courtroom.
I was going to say. Yeah, so I think that's why this was a hot subject at the time.
Yeah.
And, it does the reverse vigilante movie where vigilanteism is good and no repercussions. Because he's a lone wolf, so you murder him. And in fact, that's what I was thinking while watching this movie. He looks more like the character you would expect in the movie Freeway to be the big bad wolf than the straight-laced look he had in that movie. And so I found that a little interesting. And if you've seen Freeway, I don't know if you've seen it. Okay. So do you have any last words about Eye for an Eye? Would you recommend it? And
you know what? I am going to recommend it. Because like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. It's very cliched, but it is a crowd pleaser, and I can imagine for you, like seeing it in the theater and people reacting at every turn. Yeah, it wasn't going to make a lot of money, but it's got relatable things. And that's why these Diff Bush knockoffs get made every couple of years.
Yeah. I would definitely recommend it. I don't know if this younger generation is going to enjoy it as much, because it doesn't move fast. It has things like builds up a story.
But it's got a strong female lead.
Yeah, and it's not an action extravaganza. I know you probably would have liked it better if Madeline Stowe starred in it, as the sexy lead mama with a sex scene.
I could see Madeline Stowe in it. Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I really enjoy it. I don't feel it's a guilty pleasure. Is it predictable? Yes, but it's entertaining, and it gets emotional at the right spots where you can feel it. It doesn't feel phoned in or anything, It's not ham-fisted, But definitely, this is one of the bigger bright spots for Kiefer Sutherland's resume. So I would recommend it, even if just with him being in They Clone Tyrone, a renaissance of his work. He's my Sutherland more than Donald. I've seen more of Kiefer's work than I have of Donald's. And so he's going to be the Sutherland I pick, and not his brother who starred in those one of the Lost Boy straight-to-home video sequels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it was the second one. Jesus.
Yeah, I'm like, let's stick with Well, and not until that movie, and we never saw him again. Kiefer hasn't even put him in a movie yet. Even in his movie, Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I kind of recommend that movie. I can't give it the full, it's fucking awesome, but I feel like it's an interesting movie. Here's a hint. He has a mustache and a mullet in it, so he's still rocking. I think he rocked that look through the 90s. Like, that was his uniform. Hey, a time to kill. Mullets are ready. And nobody ever noted that was a Lost Boys reunion for him and Joel Schumacher either. So it's just like, yeah, my man Kiefer just keeps getting slept on.
He did Flatliners. He did that. He did Phone Booth. They were close. And I think Schumacher directed episodes of 24.
Oh, damn. I didn't even know Schumacher directed episodes of 24. I'm hoping it was in the first season. Yeah, because I think up until probably fucking 24, Kiefer Sutherland kept that mullet look. Is there anybody you think has that modern Sutherland kind of villainous take?
I was going to say Austin Butler, but I don't think he's there yet.
I think Shia LaBeouf could get away with it if he wasn't so method.
You know what? Yeah, I could see Shia do it.
And just a quick note, Kiefer Sutherland actually had to stop in the middle of the, I guess, initial rape scene because he kept getting sick. Like, trying to stay in character in the actions he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Just a little bit of trivia.
A young girl, so I can imagine that would be too much. Even when they did Death Wish 2, the guys playing a rapist had a hard time really doing that, even though it looks gratuitous on screen.
especially after I finally saw Death Wish 2. I'm just like, damn. I'm just like, and the thing, that was Michael Winter's girlfriend at the time. It's like, but that's a whole nother episode. We definitely have to talk about that movie. Ooh, that and 3. Ooh.
With Paul Talbot one day.
Yes, because I'm just like, now that I've seen it, now I get all of what you guys were talking about in that. But anyway, Kiefer Sutherland was never that bad in any of his movies. So that ends this week's Deep Dive. So until next time, hope to see you again, and I hope you enjoy or at least check out Eye for an Eye. We'd love to hear what you think of the movie.